Beautiful. Okay. Should I start or should I wait for 2 o'clock? I want to make sure that whoever wants to be here is here, or should I just get started?
We could get started. We've had a pretty consistent audience, and folks kind of join when they can.
Okay, beautiful. All right. Well, thank you to just everyone for joining. Like, give yourselves an applause for joining to something like this, right? Like, just putting yourselves first and wanting to learn and join in and be part of a conference. So yes. So for today, just to give you a little bit, I'm just going to be sharing kind of more of my journey. So this is not going to be anything about like concrete learnings about UX, but more so something for you guys to just connect with, to feel seen, to feel relatable. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about my story and my journey, how I went from being a teacher to being in UX and becoming a UX researcher. And then I'll kind of go into what my learnings were through that journey, and then we'll have some time for a Q&A portion. Okay. So I've categorized this kind of in three parts of the before the career change, during the career change, and then after the career change. So to give you a little bit of a background on myself, I was a teacher for 4 years. So I went to school. I got my bachelor's in education from Hunter College, and then I went on to get my master's in early education from Queens College. So all of my background was just education, education, education. I did study sociology. That was my second major. So that was something that sparked an interest for me, which is interesting because it kind of pulls into UX research, which who would have known at at that moment. And yeah, I went in really thinking that that was going to be my lifelong career, keeping it super simple, went to school for something and did it and retire from it, and that's it. I never thought that I would in a million years leave education. Prior to going into education, like truly becoming a teacher in 2018, I was actually working at Starbucks. I worked there prior to teaching and then a little moment after teaching, and we'll get into that later on. But through that job, and this will also come into play later, through that job, I met my best friend, Yasmin, which I believe already presented earlier. And we just connected on so many ways, but one of the ways that we connected was just our career struggles, things that we were struggling with that we didn't feel connected with anymore, not feeling fulfilled, etc. Something that I think a lot of us can relate to. Um, And during that time, I also moved out. So I was living with my parents during that time as a teacher. It was also COVID. And as all of you know, that was a tough time for many, many people. And so I believe in the year of 2021, I started looking to leave home. I was questioning my career. At this point, I've been there for 3 years, 3.5 years in teaching and just didn't feel like it was suiting me anymore and had no idea what I had to do. Living on my own for the first time and realizing how the salary that I was having as an educator really wasn't fitting into my life. Living on my own in New York City, it just didn't make sense. And the workload coming back home and lesson planning, just for, by the end of the week, to struggle to pay my rent and to get the groceries and pay all the other bills. So I knew that a change had to happen. I just didn't know what that change was or where to find it. Um, Eventually, I did leave teaching. My first year of teaching, I left because I felt something was off, and that's where I went back to Starbucks and worked with my best friend Yaz, which is us here. And that's really when the gears started turning for me, thinking, okay, I for sure am leaving. I'm going to go back to teaching for a bit, finish my master's, but I know that this is not the end goal anymore. I know that this is just temporary until I find out what that thing is. So, like I said, I went back to get my master's, which is crazy because I knew I wanted to leave eventually. I just didn't know what that was going to look like. But if anyone is an educator here, you know that after a certain amount of years, they need you to get a master's. You can't continue teaching, at least here in New York. You can't continue teaching unless you get your master's, and then you can continue. So I was like, listen, if this whatever next thing doesn't work, I need to make sure that I lock this in. So I have to get my master's regardless. So I was doing that. While I was doing my master's, I was researching other jobs that I could possibly move into. And I came across many different things, learning specialists, designing like educational like PowerPoints for companies, all these things that I guess were like related to education, but none of them felt right. And then I came across UX research, and I've told Samaya this many times before, but I actually came across you Ideate Labs at the time through TikTok. And someone was speaking about it. Someone was making a really quick, like 1 minute video about how you can take a course where I believe we were redesigning Spotify for fun. And it was free. And I was like, okay, well, free sounds great. With the salary that I have, free is awesome. Let's do this. It's on a Thursday, I remember, and it was after work. So I was like, I'm gonna rush home, log in, and see what this UX research thing is all about. And Spotify sounds fun, anyways. And that really was the moment. Like, that was the spark that made me realize, yes, like UX research or UX design, anything within this at the time was what felt right. And now it was just about learning about Ideate Labs, UX Woman, and really seeing if this particular boot camp was a right fit for me. And through that excitement of discovering this, I actually shared it with my friend Yasmin, and I was like, girl, like you have no idea that I found out about this cool boot camp. It's amazing. Let me send you the link. I know you've been struggling at work the same way that I have. Like, let's talk about it. We hopped on a FaceTime call. We, looked at it together. And I'm sure she already shared about how she was like, yep, I'm all for it. Sign me up. Let's do this. Um, I honestly don't know what was going through our minds that we were just so like saying yes to everything, but clearly it led us in the right direction. And so we signed up. We started in February of 2022, our boot camp, and it was a lot. I wasn't just doing that. I was finishing up my master's. I was also still teaching fifth graders at the time. And I remember during my lunch breaks having to meet with my mentor to speak about my portfolio or my project idea. And so I'm like grading tests and signing in, and it was a lot. Um, but it was well worth it. So just putting that out there that like in no way do I think that this is an easy decision for anyone or an easy journey for anyone. This is going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a a community of people to support you through this process, but it is totally, totally possible. And so I then realized that I had the summer to apply to jobs. Thankfully, as a teacher, I had the summers off, so that made it a lot more manageable. But I realized quickly that applying to jobs was no joke. I had never had a LinkedIn profile before. I had never gone through the hiring process in the typical manner, other than for a teaching job. And quickly realized that the interviewing process required flexibility on my schedule, which was not possible when teaching and being in the classroom. And I was, leaving to use the bathroom, but really taking a recruiter call and running out of the building. And I was like, this is too much. I'm not showing up fully for my job currently, so I have to make a decision. And that decision was made, and I left teaching in October 2022, which, again, for those of you who know how education works, the education world, it is a big no-no to leave in the middle of the school year. Yet I still did it. They would have preferred for me to have left in the summer, but I really wanted to see if I could do it, if I could manage the two, and I realized it was not possible. I was getting calls for, next rounds, and I couldn't make them because of my schedule. So I was like, I'm really missing out on the opportunities at hand. It wasn't a decision that I think everyone can make. We all have our different hurdles, but I at least, saw what was at hand for me, I laid out my cards on the table and saw that it would be difficult but doable and I could do it. And I had to really take a chance on myself and say, I truly believe that if I put in my all, I can get a job fairly quickly. And just, struggle bust it for a couple months or something. And so the job hunting really went into effect at that point. And I was unemployed for a total of 4 months. Just the time of being unemployed felt like the most employed I ever was because I was so busy applying, redoing my resume, redoing my portfolio, going to events to connect with other people within tech, meeting virtually with people who were willing to talk to me, just everything. It was nonstop. But luckily, I landed my first UX research job in February of 2023. And it was amazing to that moment. I will never forget because I was like cleaning out my fridge and putting groceries in and got a phone call. And, you know, to me, putting my groceries into my fridge is not a fun activity, but after that phone call, I was doing it so happily. So I will always remember that. But yes, so I got my first UX research job at Los Alamos National Laboratory. I was their first UX researcher ever. They never had a UX team before, so that was also very daunting. I'm like, me? What is that called? Uh, oh my gosh, my brain. Uh, what is that word, Samantha? When you're thinking that you're not like capable of doing something.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
Thank you. Imposter syndrome. It totally left me right now. But yes, that I was having so much imposter syndrome of just thinking like, you think I can do this? I can run this, but I really had to just believe it. If they think it, then I should be able to think it as well. Um, and so yeah, I went on that journey, and this is just to show how my life changed afterwards. Finally was working a remote job, which was something I always wanted to do. I always wanted that flexibility where I can work from home, where I can work from a coffee shop with my best friend and just go get a coffee and clickety clack together on those slow days. I was able to take long weekend trips with my friends that honestly, as a teacher, the weekend just felt like I just needed to sit on the couch and like just melt. But now with this job, I felt more energy, more energized to really live my life thoroughly. Even after work, going to the park to just watch the sunset. Before, I was watching the sunset in an hour of traffic going back home. Now I can just go and read a book and kind of decompress. My sister lives in Puerto Rico and she moved during this whole career change time. And she always lived on the same block as me. We are like this. And so having a remote job gave me the flexibility where I don't have to sacrifice my relationship with my sister. I can still go and visit her whenever I want and work remotely and have flex time. I, made new connections and went and took a retreat. Um, and it was a retreat during April, which I couldn't do as a teacher. You had a lot of guilt leaving your students, and just the system would guilt you a lot. But in this case, no, I didn't have to wait for summer vacation. I can go to this now. And thankfully, at my job there, they worked a 980 schedule, which basically just meant we worked 1 extra hour every day in order to have Fridays off, every other Friday off. So I was able to go for a hike on a Friday, which was lovely. So all of this wasn't just a change about, my salary, which we can always like bring it down to something so minuscule, like just the salary. But it was much more than that. It was a change to my lifestyle. It was a change to my energy level, and to connecting with, the things that truly matter outside of work. It's the people around you, it's the experiences. And so I was really grateful that I took that chance on myself to give myself all of this. Okay, so now continuing in UX. So I think this was an important thing to speak on. Um, just checking time. Okay. Um, I think this was an important thing to speak on because we can end it there and say, happily ever after the end. But I also want to be really realistic with everyone that this is an ongoing journey. It doesn't end. Once you get that, first role, it's lovely. But one thing I learned is it's a continuous position of learning, and knowing that you have reached this new point and celebrate it, but there's always a next point, and that will look different for everyone. You may want to increase to a senior role next. You may want to go into a more specific company that kind of suits your needs. You may want to go for a hybrid next time. And let goes can happen regardless of how many years you have in the role, how new you are. So I spent 2 years at my first role at Lanel. And even throughout that time, I was continuously transforming my portfolio. I was still adding to it. Now I have new projects to add, I have new experiences to add to my resume, and keeping that up to date was really important. And I learned that the hard way. Because in March of this year, actually, I was let go from that job due to funding issues with the company. And so I learned really quickly, like, oh, I should be keeping these things up to date, regardless of if I have a role or if I don't. When I'm learning something new about myself, of what a new skill set that I've developed, I should be adding that actively, not waiting till I truly need it. Right. And so this is another part, kind of returning back to this, seeing all of this, having the time to develop those relationships in that community came and benefited. Oh, this is going to play again. Awesome. Came and benefited me during this time. I had to fall back on my community, on my resources, and build knowledge. Thankfully, I stayed in connection with a lot of people on LinkedIn. Those meetups that I spoke about, those came in handy during this time when I was let go. Making good connections at my job, those people knew people at other companies that they had worked at prior, and they're like, "Hey, listen, I know you were let go. Let me send you, the email to so and so person. I think you'd be a great fit there." Um, those things come so in handy. So, like, please don't ever forget to keep that going, regardless of your position. Um, Create a community, find those resources, save them, create a tab where you can revert back to it, and you don't have to be learning for the first time ever after 2 years of having a job and relearning things. No, you have it. You prepared yourself for it. And so, yes, I went back into the interviewing process, and I had a handful of interviews and even more and more and more rejections, because that is just always the case, more rejections than interviews, but they will come your way. And thankfully, I received a job offer in May, so this month. Still, working out all the paperwork stuff. But yes, I got a job offer, and I truly think that my learnings from the first time really helped me make this a shorter journey. The first time it was many, many months, and this time it wasn't as long. And I truly attribute that to what I learned at UX Woman, the people that I connected with at UX Women, but also the people that I connected with afterwards. And I think that's because there was a priority of constantly being a learner. Um, and I was able to go about this journey of, being unemployed that normally causes so much stress in somebody. I was able to go through it kind of in a more relaxed manner, which is new for me because I'm Miss Anxiety. But this time, no. I found ways. I took care of dogs on the side. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make some money on the side. I'm gonna, sign up for Rover, take care of them because I'm home, so why not? I'm still gonna enjoy small treats here and there. Like I'm still going to like treat myself if I need to keep some regularity of my life. If I can do that, if it's a cup of coffee, then cool. I got out of the house and I got myself a cup of coffee. Perfect. And I still went to like events or free events with friends, and that community that I said is so important that keeps you lifted. So this time I kind of didn't fall into a like depressive place where it's like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? No, I've been here before. I know what to do. I prepared myself properly. I have these resources, and I can get myself out of it. And I did. And I think all of you can as well. So overall, the takeaway from the entire UX experience, but also from UX women specifically, is knowing that resilience is a constant. Um, you will have to find some level of resilience within you to get through the entire process, this new chapter, I would say, in your life. Get comfortable with ongoing feedback, and that's not only within the boot camp, within the boot camp, it's also within your jobs, right? Get comfortable that people are going to tell you what you need to work on, and that's actually a lovely thing. That's actually a positive thing. You want that. You want to grow. You don't want to remain the same way, right? Um, and just finding that support system, it's going to look different. If it's your friends, then beautiful. If you have them nearby, even better. But if it's not that, it may be family or it may be a support system that's online. Maybe, you create that support system through meetups. I know there was something called UX Cafecitos, which was just a group that I had found online from just searching. And I really wanted to find like fellow Latinos within UX and kind of just have that support system the first time around when I was unemployed. And it really helped. It was really cute. It was like every Friday morning, and everyone brought their coffee, and we just all talked and connected. And I still remain connected with some of those people till this day. So find what works for you in terms of support, stay resilient, and just get comfortable with constantly being a learner and growing. And that is the end of my presentation. Obviously, there is tons of time for a Q&A, but also I've linked my LinkedIn profile. Let me know. I'll send this in the chat so that you guys have access to those slides and you can properly click on that. Um, but yes, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am almost on there daily.
Yeah, I think we can go into the Q&A now. I'm sure a lot of folks, we actually have a lot of educators on this call. So I think prioritizing the folks who are coming from education, trying to break into UX, I think we'd love to hear more from you and your job search journey in particular. And then we can prioritize general job search questions as well, and work-life balance questions, right? I think a great
Right.
point of Velvet, your presentation was the work-life balance and how you achieve that for yourself. And I think when we were on a one-on-one a while ago, you said something really wise that stuck with me. And I remind myself about that, like in terms of work-life balance, because I lose my work-life balance all the time.
Yeah.
So it's always a great reminder. Excuse my
Oh my
dog.
God, I'm happy to know that I said something that stuck. I'm always so surprised with that because my memory, I'm like little Miss Dory. I'm like, I forget. So I'm like, I said that? I'm like, wow, so mindful. Okay, there's a lot going on here. Thank you to everyone who is congratulating me, by the way. I'm seeing those in here. Everyone helping me finding the word imposter syndrome. Thank you. Um, I was just wondering how long it was from the time you joined the boot camp until landing a job. Um, that's a good question. So the boot camp started February of 2022, I believe. And then, yeah, so actually it was a full year from start date, like my first day in the boot camp to the day that I got the phone call that I got the job. So I would say a full year, which I didn't even realize it was a full year, but yeah. Um, about all of this, the benefits of more time and flexibility, absolutely. Um, searching for roles. Thank you, thank you. Luckily, do you think it would taken less time if you already had some internships under your belt? I think for each person, it's very different. It's dependent on what you're willing to dive into, what you have the time for. Some people really need money like immediately, so maybe an unpaid internship isn't the right answer. But for me in particular, I was just in a place financially, thankfully, I had set myself up in a place where I really could take maybe like a couple. I like did my finances and realized I could take a couple months. Um, off without, having a job. And so I really wanted to focus in because it was so many new things, right? I was leaving teaching for the first time. I had just recently moved out. I was like, okay, instead of doing an internship, for me, what feels right is to just really hone in on perfecting like portfolio, resume, my knowledge, going to workshops, free resources, things like that. But absolutely, do I think that an internship can help it go quicker if you have that under your belt? For sure. I don't see that it would hurt anyone. Um, okay. Let me see. I see that there's more messages coming through. How important is it to learn some coding skills with design skills? So you think for a UX role, it is also important to have some coding skills? Latest tool is really required. I think that can be dependent on if you're going into UX design or if you're going into UX research. I initially thought that I was really interested in UX design when I started the boot camp. And that's something that I really loved was that I was getting a dabble of both, of design and research. So thankfully, because of that, my exposure to UX research, I realized, oh, I'd actually really prefer UX research over design, which I would have never thought. Um, and I think for UX research specifically, from my experience, you don't need any coding skills. I personally haven't had to do any coding at all. I wasn't asked anything about coding. I don't have coding anywhere on my resume. Um, but if you're going for design, I'm going to make the assumption that that's probably more needed, but I can't really speak on that since I haven't been in the application process for a design role. Um, is your okay? How long did it take to create my portfolio? That's a really hard question because it was like a constantly iterating it. Like, in one way, I could say it's taken me, how long has it been? 3 years, let's say, and ongoing, right? Because I'm still editing it. I'm still adding to it. Of course, there's moments where I'm kind of slower on it. It's quieter. I'm not really adding, but I will occasionally be on LinkedIn, see someone else's portfolio and be like, "Oh, that's a good idea," or "Oh, they worded that really well." I resonate with that. That's actually similar to my experience of how they presented themselves or how they designed it. And so I'll go back to mine and kind of tweak it a little bit. So think of it more of like a marathon than like a sprint. So I would say get to a place where you have like a checklist of what you want on your portfolio, add that in. And I would say once you have all the things on your checklist on your portfolio, I think it's a safe bet to start applying with that portfolio. I think that's a better question of like when were you done with the portfolio to a point where you felt like it was good enough to like send in to like start applying. I think you need to think of what bullet points you want as part of that portfolio. Once that's filled out, then start applying, but then always tweak it, make it look nicer, add in more images. Like maybe later you want to add a larger paragraph than just bullet points, whatever it may be. Um, yeah, I hope that helps. How did you position your teaching experience? That's a good question. How did you position your teaching experience when applying for roles? Also, what skills from teaching has been most helpful in your job? That's a great question. Actually, that's really similar to one of the questions that they asked me at my interview for this job that I received. They had asked me, what are the transferable skills? What are some skills that you have since you transitioned from teaching to UX research? Tell us about that process. Um, and so I told them something along the lines of, I think there's a lot of transferable skills. Two things that I really enjoyed about teaching was assessing, so assessments with children for like their reading levels and parent-teacher conferences. And those two things, the things that they have in common is that it's very people-centered experiences. It's very one-on-one. It's also based off of like qualitative and quantitative studies, right? I am seeing a trajectory for their reading scores. It's been going down by 20% in just the first quarter of the year. What's going on? Um, Also, with the parent teacher conferences, that's more qualitative. I'm talking to them about the quality of their reading and that it's not, I've been noticing that there's a negative connotation to reading with them. Can we speak about that? Like, is anything happening at home that can maybe be like contributing to that? Here's some ideas that I have to problem solve that we can take into the home setting. So those two were moments where I am doing UX research. I am conducting one-on-one interviews. I am trying to solve problems, find the pain point with my user, the student. Um, and so, yeah, I shared that and they were like, "Oh, like I never thought of teaching being so similar to UX research. Thank you so much for like letting us know that. That makes a lot of sense." And of course, I was like, "Hee hee," and got the job and I was like, "Yay." So clearly that works, that response. And it's the truth. Um, yeah, so I mean, there's so many more. There's, the documentation that you guys have to do as teachers, you know, checking for levels of growth within the students from their first report card to their mid report card to their last report card. We are doing that in UX research. You are doing quarterly check-ins. You are doing benchmark testing. These are all very similar. It's just tweaking the wording. It's not tweaking what you're doing, because what you're doing is that. It's just knowing that it's no longer did assessments with my students. It is like conducted user interviews with, I don't know, like 40 plus participants. That's the difference. That's the wording there. Um, Thank you for sharing. First job. Oh, wondering how you make connections between education and UX research. So, hopefully what I just said kind of answers that. Yes, the boot camp that I did is Ideate Labs, which is now UX Woman. So it is this. I am I guess you can say, graduate um, from the year 2022. Let's see. Would love to hear about your daily workflow. What does a typical day look like for you from morning to evening? And specifically, what software or tools do you use the most as a UX researcher? I'm curious to know what's essential to learn, especially beyond Figma. That's an awesome question. I see a lot of people liked it. Um, okay, so there's a lot there. What does a typical day look like for me from morning to evening? So I will say at my last position at Lanel, I was doing UX research, but later on I kind of realized that I was also doing like informational architecture there as well. And I didn't even realize it as I was doing it. And then actually Yasmin was the one that told me, she was like, "Girl, that's information architecture." I'm like, "Oh, another thing to add to my resume." So I didn't even know that I was doing that, but I was creating there were meetings, morning meetings, right? So like I would jump on a meeting with my team, kind of discuss what we're gonna do for the day, what the week has been looking like. After that, I'll, check my calendar, check my emails, check kind of every company has different things. We used a program called Asana. It's not something that's necessary for everyone to learn, but it was a um like a project management tool that some companies use. So I would check that to see what tasks have been assigned to me, due dates that are coming up. And yeah, we used user Zoom a lot there. I will say I see that pretty often when I was interviewing, even this time around. They say like experience with user Zoom preferred. User Zoom or user testing, they're kind of used interchangeably sometimes. Obviously Figma. I would say, knowing how to work all parts of like Microsoft, so like Teams, Whiteboard, um, and then like Google Suite, right? Like so like your typical um Google Docs, the Excel sheets, etc., PowerPoint. All of those I think are really great ones to be super familiar with. Um, what software tools? Yes. Um, And what I did using user Zoom and user testing was a plethora of research studies. So that can be anything from surveys, as simple as surveys, to like click tests or A/B tests, card sortings, preferential testing, benchmark testing. All of that are things that you can do on the system that's used. And for me particularly, it was user Zoom and user testing. But there's so many other ones that I am not familiar with. um, they're so easy to learn though, you guys. Like I did not have experience with it prior to landing my job. They knew that I didn't have any experience with it, and I learned on the job and it was very, very easy, super intuitive. Um, that was a really great question. Um, what was it like shifting your mindset from educator to a UX researcher? Uh, I think the hardest part about shifting my mindset, it wasn't really about shifting my mindset. I think it was more about like I hear the word shift and I'm thinking the hardest shift was shifting from something that is like in person, and the language that is used within education versus the language that's used in typical tech world, and specifically from a remote setting. It's really different, connecting with people, their cameras are off sometimes, technical issues, you're chatting about it. And I am super old school, like as much as I love remote life because of what it gives for the rest of my life, um, I do function a lot better in person, like tactical, like things that are like hands-on, that you're showing me, you're walking me through it, let me have a visual. And you don't really always get that, when working a remote job, right? It's you're chatting through Teams. So that I think is the hardest transition and the hardest shift of it all. But if you're already doing like kind of computer work in whatever job that you already have, then that's maybe something that's not going to be a big shift for you at all. Um, Had a question about portfolio, creating a website portfolio as opposed to making a PDF. Does this matter for recruiters? I think a portfolio is much better than a PDF. It's way more interactive. Um, you get to, add a little bit about yourself, create pages. Mine has like a section for my UX research work, like just UX in general. Then I have another section that's like, things that I like to do outside of UX. And sometimes that makes a difference. For some companies, they really want a like personality match. I've noticed that a lot. Some interviews are super heavy on your portfolio. They're giving you an hour to walk you through your portfolio, for you to walk them through your portfolio. And then other interviews have been 30 minutes. They don't want you to share your screen. They don't want you to talk about your portfolio. They're just going to ask you questions about you, how you are in a work setting, how you are with a team. And so if the interview is like that, then they're kind of focusing more on, um, if you're like a culture fit. And if it's more on the portfolio side, then obviously they're looking more for like skill sets, right? How can you speak to the work that you do? So I think to be prepared for those kinds of interviews, it is better to have a portfolio versus a PDF. Um, yeah, does it matter for recruiters? I think it matters more for like the hiring managers. Competitive right now, it seems like every bit matters. Absolutely. Um, if you don't mind me asking, how many completed UX projects on your portfolio did you have prepared when you applied for your first UX role? That's a great question. When I, let me see, when I applied to Lano, I believe my portfolio only had two. Um, yeah, I only had two. I had my project for UX Women. I had my like case study for my project, and then I had another one in there. So yeah, I had a minimum of two. Now, when I applied for this one and got this one, I had four. So I still have those old two, my first initial ones, and then I have two projects from my job at Lano. And like I said, because I found out that I did information architecture, I did one project focusing on UX research and another one focusing, um, more on information architecture. Are you currently in the UX education space or did you transition to a different industry? I am not in UX education, actually. Even though that was what I initially wanted to go into, I was like, I really want to like work somewhere like Scholastics. That'd be awesome. Um, but I have not gotten there. Maybe one day. And I will do this once again, this conference, and say that I've gotten into UX specifically within education. But no, not yet. Um, how did you prepare for that transition in your portfolio and interviews? I feel like what I shared, went into that. What was your strategy for your resume that was helping you get interviews? Um, okay. So I do think that it would benefit for you to have different, like a variety of different resumes, if that makes sense. So let's say if you know that you're trying to go within like fintech, and then you also have an interest in going into like e-commerce, make those resumes suit the language of those two different fields, if that makes sense. And, the next question might be like, well, how would I know what that language is if I've never been in it? Go on LinkedIn, look up those companies, look up people who work at those companies, right? Like you can go in LinkedIn, let's say, and find like, I don't know, Sephora, go to people and look at people within, type in UX researcher. You'll find people within Sephora that are within the title of UX research. Click on their profiles and just do your own research. Look at the way that they're speaking about their work. Look at the language that they're using. When you see job listings for, let's say, Sephora puts up that they're looking for a UX researcher, look at how they describe the responsibilities. What language are they using? I'm not saying copy and paste it into your resume, but use similar language, find commonalities, and just that's why I say like you're in a constant iteration phase of your resume and your what's it called? Uh Portfolio. Let me see. Someone's sharing their screen? Not sure what this is, Samaya.
Oh, um, no one should be able to share their screen. So I'm just going to quit out of that. And I would please request that folks don't share their screen in the middle of someone else's presentation. That's really disrespectful. My apologies, Velvet.
No worries. I see someone has their hand raised. Um, Let me see. Urja?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, Velvet. I just wanted to ask one question.
Mhm.
Is it important to have information architecture and user flows in the portfolio? And is it required to explain them during the interview process? Do you think they're important?
I think it's dependent on the role. If you see that in their requirements, in their description of the role, if you see that they're speaking a lot about information architecture, so some of that would be like creating site maps. Some of that can be creating like content auditing. If you see that language in their description, then maybe you would want to speak on that. If you do have experience with that, then absolutely like make that a highlight, a point that you want to really like emphasize. But if it's your typical UX research job and you see that their descriptions are just, they want you to just be doing typical testing, like conducting interviews, creating surveys, then maybe it's not as necessary and then you may not have to include it. I think it's really dependent on what kinds of jobs you're looking to go into and what kind of experience you're coming with. Because at first I didn't have information architecture at all on my portfolio or on my resume. I actually didn't even really understand what that was.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much, Velvet. And thank you so much for sharing your journey. It was really inspiring. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Um, okay. How would you go about developing a portfolio other than LinkedIn? Okay, so we spoke about that. Um, what transfers? Okay. Sorry. Love user testing and user Zoom. I know, it's the best. It's so easy. Um, how do you work with UX product designers as a UX researcher? As a UX designer with no experience working with user researchers, I'm really curious about the relationship and how you work with them. Um, Again, I think it's super different at every company. So like at Lanel, we were working heavily with the designers. I would collaborate with like thoughts and ideas with designers all of the time, basically daily. But there was another job that I was applying to, and they were describing the role to me, And they said, we actually don't speak at all with the designers. You are never speaking with the designer. You are only speaking with the customer. And research is completely separate from the designer. You do your research. We find out if it's a good enough like research study to continue with from the customer. They will determine if it's like a pass fail. And then from there, they will take that and pass it on to the designers. So you never speak with designers or developers. So it's really dependent on where you're working. But for me, it was just a lot of collaboration at Lano, in terms to answer your question of how did I work with them. Um, just meetings, just chats, sharing Figma files, them sharing their designs with me, seeing if I agree with it based off of my research and vice versa, brainstorming sessions, things like that. Not sure what grade you were teaching before, but did your experience working with younger minds also help in your design work at least? Did it inspire you to create products for younger users? Yeah, so actually my project here, with Samaya was focused on children. It was oh my God, it feels like forever ago. So now I'm like, what was it? It was called Droplet, and it was a app. It was an idea of an app for children's mental health, and where they can kind of go in and kind of like your Duolingo, where you get to like complete something every day. They would be able to complete something that would help toward their social emotional skills and their social emotional learning and growth. So like one day it might be like a breathing exercise, the next day it might be a stretch, the next day it might be a journal entry. So that was something I could speak on, and especially because I was trying to go into the educational field for UX research. When I did go on interviews, I can speak on it a lot more confidently because I did have background knowledge on education. So definitely like pick something that is going to tailor to what you feel confident in, because a lot of us might um what is it called? A lot of us might go in feeling like, oh man, like I don't know what I want to do. I don't know anything within UX research. I don't know their lingo. Oh my gosh. But if you have a little bit of like a sprinkle of something that you do feel confident in, which mine was education, then that confidence will kind of like exude into that interview. So if I know there was someone in my cohort that was a therapist prior, and they did like a therapy app. And from what I know of, I believe they landed a job. I forgot her name. Um, but she was a therapist before and really spoke to it well. I know like we had our like practice sessions in our meetings, so I saw hers and I was like, wow, she's speaking on that so well. But it's also because she knew what she was talking about to a certain extent. She knew. She just had to tweak it for UX ears. So definitely, I would say just stick to something that you feel confident in, and knowledgeable in, and like just passionate about as well. Okay. Are we good on time? I just want to make sure that like no one's waiting for me to.
No, no, no. We have about
Okay,
15 minutes left.
beautiful. Okay, awesome. I'm so sorry. I'm going to scroll down because I'm going through them slowly and then I'm realizing that there's 25 new ones at the bottom. So I'm just gonna scroll down. While I'm scrolling and reading through, I see someone, Sonali, has their hand raised.
Hi. So I had a question. I've worked as a user experience researcher before, but I struggle with creating my portfolio. I feel like some people might share this because most of the work I've done is within a private company, and I'm not sure what can be shared in the portfolio, what might be like insights which the company wouldn't want other people knowing, and how have you approached this before?
And I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last word of you said that you've done this work before, but that you struggle with what in particular?
Basically, when creating a portfolio, I'm not sure what I can share and what insights to withhold
Oh,
because it's like company proprietary information at the end of the day,
right.
right?
Yeah, that's a good point. For sure, so for the people who do have experience within UX research, and I think that's great to comment on. Some companies will have kind of like restrictions on what you can and cannot share depending on just the privacy rules of that company. At least for me, they gave me kind of like a scope on we had to send all of our work over to a specific email and they would approve or disapprove of certain things that we can place onto our portfolios, onto our websites. I think one way around that, because not every company is going to be like that, one way is obviously having it like password protected so that you're not sharing it with just anybody and everybody, and it's specifically just for people who are like serious about looking at your portfolio for an interview. Um, I think that a lot of the time what I see on some portfolios is that, funny enough, you would think that the problem that you would see is that there's not enough information, but actually I see the opposite. I see that there's a lot of portfolios where there's too much information. It's overwhelming, right? You have to put yourself in the shoes of the recruiter, or even better yet, I would go further and say put yourself in the shoes of a hiring manager. And they are going through so many interviews. And on top of those interviews, they're having their own job that they have to get back to. So they do not want to just sit through all of the nitty-gritty details of the entire project. They want to get like a high level scope of what it is. So really highlight the things that you think were more impressive about the work that you've done. There's been times where I felt like for the role, if it was more applicable to just go through my actual like portfolio website and scroll through it. And there were other interviews where I felt like it was more applicable to create a slideshow and just take screenshots of the parts that I actually think spoke to like skill sets that were powerful on my end that applied to the role in particular. So I would say definitely condense stuff. Don't write like 3 paragraphs worth of things. They're not going to read it. You're not going to sit there and just read off the screen either, right? So there's no point of it being like a whole essay on your portfolio. Really condense it, make bullet points. You could speak more to things when you're going through it during an interview. It doesn't have to be on the actual portfolio itself. I think more demonstrations, graphs, photos, screenshots, even videos are more helpful than a full paragraph. I hope that kind of answers your question. I know I went a little bit off on a tangent there.
Yeah, kind of answers my question.
I'm sorry.
I think it also depends, like maybe I should just talk to my manager and say, these are the things I want to write about. Is it okay or not?
Yes, yeah,
Maybe.
you can speak to your manager. I know some people don't want to speak to their managers because it makes it seem like they're going to be, leaving to another job. If that's the case, you can always speak to like HR and see if they can kind of speak for you, like get in contact with like the security and privacy department for you to see if they can get an answer for you of what you can and cannot be placing so that you kind of go around your manager and just speak to your HR to see like what the logistics are, and make sure that you're not like getting yourself in trouble in any way.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we have 9 minutes left, so let me see if I can get as many answered here as possible. Um, did you use any of your experience as an RA at Columbia University to tailor your portfolio? If so, what advice do you have for tailoring it to UX research language? That's a really great question because, to be honest, I never even thought about that. I did not. I did not take any of my so to what she's speaking on, I was a research assistant at Columbia University for just a couple months. So it wasn't that large of an experience that I felt like it made sense to speak to it in my portfolio. Also because it wasn't UX research specific. Yes, it was research, but it was research assistant and from like an academic point. Um, but I made that decision because I already had things that I was speaking on, right? Like I had my project, I had another project up there. So I was like, okay, I think this is enough. And I think I can make my point with this. But if you feel like if you have RA experience and that's the only experience that you have, then yeah, absolutely speak on that. How to connect that back to UX research. I think like research assistants, at least for me, like do a lot of like transcribing videos. You're looking at data sheets and like making sense of data sheets. You're collaborating from a mindset of quantitative and qualitative studies, like all of that, speak on that, like the larger scale of things. If that's the only work that you have that you can like speak on. Um, as a UX researcher, do you use any specific software tools to organize and document your research findings, both text and visual? Again, dependent on the job. Yes, we used Figma. That I used Figma heavily to document my findings, do the analyzing, share with team members. It was all through Figma. Some of it Google Sheets, Excel, but very rarely. I also, funny enough, used sticky notes a lot on my laptop because it was just on my screen constantly. So like to-do lists, things I want, questions I wanted to answer, all of that was there on my screen. So I'm like, oh, that's right. I told myself I'll do this tomorrow. Let me get on that quick. Um, so that's like, at least for my way of learning, that was an easy one. Okay. Nearing the end of this, I see 6 messages, much better than 25 before. Has your background in sociology/social science helped you in transitioning into UX research from a fellow sociology major? Hello. Um, Absolutely. I have seen so often um on like the job listings them saying like, oh, preferred experience in sociology, psychology, or related field, something along those lines, in terms of like, your education background. And I speak on that for sure. Like if I see that that's something that they're saying they prefer, in that interview, they'll usually ask for like your elevator pitch. They'll usually ask you like, okay, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I will go into like, okay, well, I was an educator, but I always had like a hunger to learn about people and how we work in society that stems all the way back from my sociology major, back at Hunter College. And then I'll move into how that connects over to UX research. So for sure, I think you having a sociology major is a plus. And clearly, if you did that major, there's an interest there. So you already have those connections back to UX research. Okay, let's see. Any portfolio and resume advice regarding what was most helpful during your 4-month application process? Why did it move? Where'd it go? Okay. The job market is so competitive right now, so it seems challenging to think of ways to stand out as an applicant. I hear you. It definitely is. It is daunting and it feels like it's a never-ending cycle of just no's and unfortunately emails. Um, I hear you. It really is. I don't want to tell you like you've got like it is hard and we all are going through that difficulty, whether you have no experience or whether you have 2, 3, 4 years of experience, it's difficult overall. Um, I too am kind of was challenged with like how do I stand out even just previous to this month, right? Um, I would say I'm trying to think of like what are things that can make you stand out. I think I would just go back to what I was saying of like it really is an extra step and it's really to just keep it on simple terms. It's annoying to have to return back to a resume you've been staring at every day for weeks, for months, and keep revising it and look back at your portfolio that you're like so over and keep revising it, but it helps. So like if you have a resume that is tailored, like there was a point where it was so hard to be applying to UX research jobs. Um, I had already applied to all of them. I would check every day and I applied to all. They were done. There was nothing new. So I had to really think outside of the box. I'm like, okay, what are some companies titling these jobs as? Because some companies are titling it as literally the letters like UXR. Then some people are putting user experience researcher. Some people are putting it down as like user experience strategist. Some people are like it can be so many different titles. So what I did was I created a resume for UX research. I created a resume for like content strategist. I created one at the time I was looking for learning and development roles because that's what I was doing as a teacher for a bit too. So I did that. And I created all of those varieties, which are still speaking to the same things, just with different language. And I created a variety of resumes. So when I was applying, and I saved them all onto my LinkedIn. So all I had to do, I made it a lot easier for myself that when I was applying, I look at their criteria of what they're looking for. I'm like, this one sounds a little bit more like my content strategist resume than my UX research strategist. They're using language that's a little bit more content strategy like, and I would apply with that resume over the UX research resume and then go on to the next one. The next one is it's just testing, it's only using user Zoom, it's only interviewing. I'll send them my UX research resume. So it's not really something crazy that I'm doing to stand out, right? But it does stand out because I am tailoring to what you want, to what your needs are. I'm making it simple for the recruiter or hiring manager to literally skim it and be like, okay, yeah, I see the word sitemap. Okay, I see the word content auditing. Okay, beautiful. All right, yep, interviews, perfect. Those are the keywords they're looking for. Done, pass through, let's call them. Like that's what I'm going for. Is it always a perfect science? Absolutely not. But at least that's what I tried to do. This time that was a little bit different than the last time. The last time I was creating iterations of one resume and just constantly editing it and using that one resume. This time I was creating iterations of multiple different resumes. Um, Hope that makes sense. I see Samaya nodding her head, so I'm gonna assume it makes sense. Okay, there's 1 minute left. I see a small question here. What were some of the best job sites you used? I feel that LinkedIn roles I have rarely got a response on. You are right, and that is something that I think I have to improve on as well. I was only using LinkedIn. I was not using anything else, but please, by all means, use other ones as well. Like Yasmin, I know used all of them. She was on LinkedIn, she was using that other one that everyone uses. You see, I'm not familiar with it.